Hi everyone, it's Imran Amed, founder and CEO of the Business of Fashion. This is our latest episode of BOF Live. All this week, my colleagues at BOF and I have been talking to people all around the world to understand their perspective on what's happening. And today I'm really pleased to chat with my friend Riz Ahmed. So I'm just going to invite him to join. See if I can connect with him. There he is.
Hey Imran, how you doing?
Not bad. You changed your hair.
Yeah, this is what happens on day 7 of quarantine.
Oh, right. Did you cut it at home?
Yeah, I don't know if you've kind of found yourself drastically rearranging your furniture or shaving off parts of your body hair, but or maybe braiding unexpected parts of your body hair. But I've just I was just kind of feeling a little bit stir crazy and needed a haircut, so I just took the clippers to it. I'd recommend it. Very excuse me, very, very therapeutic.
It's liberating getting rid of those locks.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
How you doing? How are you keeping? It's a crazy time.
You know, it is a crazy time. I was actually in Italy just when the outbreak happened there, and then I was in Paris for Fashion Week. So I have been working from home for a while. I went into the office for a few days after the kind of got cleared. I had no issues, but then, this has been my situation for a few weeks now. Our whole office is obviously working from home, has been for more than 10 days now. So, getting used to it. I'm grateful to be healthy. I'm grateful that my family and my team are healthy. But this is a very challenging moment, I think, for all of us to make sense of. How are things on your side?
Yeah, I think similar to yourself, it feels like there are two very contradictory sets of feelings that are kind of fighting for space in my brain and in my heart right now. And one of them is a sense of real gratitude to be relatively safe and healthy, gratitude to be living in a country that can probably deal with this issue a bit better than some of the other countries that this virus will hit. And also kind of in awe, I would say, rather than grateful, of this kind of biblical moment that has such kind of, I don't know, it has such kind of a kind of almost poetic, biblical color to it. And I'm really hesitating in expressing that because I really understand that there's this other side also, which is this creeping dread and anxiety and awareness of the lives that are being lost and that will continue to be lost. The fogginess of our horizons makes it very hard to feel productive and to, really there's the loss of control and helplessness. So that exists. And yet there's also this kind of big picture when I step out of almost my own body, my own mind, when I kind of try and step back from a human perspective and look at it from a planetary point of view, it does feel like Gaia or Mother Earth is kind of self-regulating in a way. She's banished us all to a meditation retreat of some kind. Now that is an incredibly a positive spin on what is a devastating virus that will kill many, many people. And I don't mean to undermine that, but as I said, there's these two kind of contradictory feelings that are going on with me. And funnily enough, we spoke about this when we first met, Imran, is that, what a big impact on your life Vipassana meditation and meditation retreats have had.
Yeah.
It's almost like we've all been grounded and sent back to our rooms to think about what we've done to the planet. And we have to, meditate on this, and we have to face ourselves, and we have to, I think one of the most challenging things many of us will face is our own inner voice. Who are we without the productivity? Who are we without our careers? Who are we without our audiences? Without our social lives? So there's something profoundly spiritual, poetic, meditative, and necessary about what's happening right now from a planetary and spiritual perspective. And yet just on a human level, it's fucking terrifying
Yeah.
and awful. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and I guess the other layer for me is just, you know, just below that is just like I'm worried about my parents. I'm worried about people who are vulnerable to these
Yeah.
illnesses, to this illness. And so there's this like slight, especially when you start hearing stories about people who were apparently healthy. So I'm grateful to be healthy, and I see this like as a really important moment of like global reflection and like a big pause or reset. But also like there's this like anxiety about like this thing is spreading, and it's a lot to think about. It's hard.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. And I kind of do think that the world won't ever fully go back to the way it was.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that we'll move forwards, but I think this is a watershed moment
Yeah.
in the same way that 9/11 was, or the same way that the financial crash was. And I'm wondering what that new world looks like. I'm wondering how we will play a part in shaping that new world.
Yeah.
And, with reference to the fashion industry, I wonder whether there are, what your kind of forecast might be around what the future
Oh
looks
my
like.
gosh. I mean, I think for me, the thing that's come into sharp relief is the conversation that our industry has been having about sustainability, which I know is something you've been thinking about a lot with some of your collaborators. And it feels like a lot of these things that were kind of bubbling under the surface are just going to get like an acceleration or a boost from this. Once we do get through this, those conversations are not going to be held in, close quarters anymore. They're going to become the dominant conversations. It was already happening, I think, but I think it's just going to take those conversations to a whole new level, especially when it comes to, you were using the word productivity on a personal level. I'm also thinking about productivity on an industry level. I mean, I think perhaps like the fashion industry was overly productive. We were serving this human overconsumption. There was just so much stuff. And we did a story earlier this year and did some research, and it turns out the fashion industry produced 114 billion garments of clothing last year.
It's crazy.
And if you just think about that, it was already etched into my brain, and I've just been thinking about that number and like what that means. If you took those garments and you allocated them mostly to people in the West or into the, like developed economies, and it's like a staggering number of pieces of clothing per person, because people were wearing their clothes for such short periods of time. So I feel like it's very hard to predict exactly what the world's going to be like after. But the one thing I feel a lot of people seem to be taking away from this is like this overconsumption situation.
Yeah. I'm just kind of having a look at the comments as you're speaking, and a lot of people kind of, what you're saying is resonating with a lot of people in that this is unsustainable.
Yeah.
I think we were kind of driving off a cliff, with our eyes closed or blindfolded. And I think now we're off the end of that cliff, or this is that moment of reckoning, isn't it? And there's something about this moment that's causing us to go home and reflect, causing us to think about the way we live, the way our society is organized. Because I do think that, the inequality in our society, the lack of universal healthcare in some societies, namely America, as the most prominent example of a rich country that refuses to provide basic healthcare to its citizens. I think that does, all these things are kind of just highlighted in a moment like this. The fault lines, the fractures, the weaknesses, the failings of our society to kind of operate and live as a community. The failings of our society to behave like a society is becoming really, really transparent right now. And I really hope that we do kind of move forwards in a new way. With regards to the fashion industry, I would really love to see some, A-grade fashion brands come forwards and say, hey, we're not going to put out 50 seasons a year anymore.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
just not going to do it. We're going to make less clothes. They're going to be a little bit more special. And you're going to have a different relationship to those clothes. I would just really love to see that. And I wonder whether this is the wake-up call. Of course, this isn't a kind of planetary emergency. Emergency from an environmental point of view. There's something about this moment that feels like a reckoning. And I would love to see that happen. I mean, I wonder, do you think that that is something that is possible? Do you think we could see these top fashion brands, you know, lead the charge, you know, and say, hey, guess what? We don't need to. I mean, how many collections does your average kind of, you know, A-grade fashion brand put out a year, would you say?
know, I think it's up to us to lead the charge. I think consumers are going to have to lead that charge. And I
how?
think,
What does that look like?
I think it's about, I think ultimately if everyone's having this moment of reflection, this pause, this poetic, biblical opportunity to reflect, then that has to then be reflected in each of our individual behaviors. Because that system of 114 billion garments is only sustainable because we as consumers are enabling it. And so if we continue to enable it, the businesses will continue to operate that way. So I think the behavioral change, the shift is going to have to come from us.
Yeah.
The companies will follow the consumer. The companies will follow what people are, you know, asking for. And I think that's going to be tricky. So let's see. I don't know.
Yeah, I do agree with you. You know, I think that we have to vote with our feet. We have to vote with our wallets. You know, we have to kind of reflect our values with our wallets. You know, over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, I've become more and more involved in you know, in fashion. I'd say, you know, just kind of building relationships with young designers and established designers. You know, getting to know you and educating myself. You know, in conversation with you. And the reason why clothes and fashion matter to me so much is because, to me, they are the most immediate reflection of your identity or of your values.
Yeah.
You know, it's a way of signaling who you are. It's a way of signaling your tribe. It's a way of signaling, in a way, what you believe in. You know, and so if we can kind of really, really drill down on what that means and understand that actually, it's not just you are what you eat, it's you are what you wear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if the clothing that you have decided to buy, decided to put on is produced ethically, that is a reflection of who you are. That is a reflection of your values. And I do think that we're seeing a generation of young people now coming up who are ready to kind of commit, you know, to their values in the way they dress, ready to advertise their values in, you know, and signal their values in what they're wearing. And this is kind of part of what's driving a project that I've been working on, as you know, in the background for a while now, which is to kind of create a curated space for sustainable fashion. That's something that I've been heavily involved in the last, you know, year and a half or so. And it's something that I hope to kind of, you know, bring to the public before too long, is just a kind of go-to destination for great sustainable clothes. And actually, even the word sustainable is problematic. So I'm kind of, I prefer to use the word conscious fashion, you know, and I think if we can kind of create spaces where consumers can connect to conscious clothing, then I think we might be able to make this transition, which is a much needed transition from being, from fashion conscious to conscious fashion.
Yeah.
You know, that's the transition that we need to be making. And I'm looking forward to try and kind of help play my part in that, that transition.
I think that's really great that you've been thinking about that. And I don't know if you've had any conversations with anyone in government or policymakers, but I think they also have a role to play to hold companies to account. Yeah, because I think
legislation helps.
Well, I think obviously consumers have a part to play. I think, you know, there has to be. I don't know if you know, but in France, there's this Minister of Ecology I met with who's amazing. Her name is Brune Poisson. She put in place some legislation that bans companies from burning products that they don't sell, for
Oh wow.
example. Yeah, because, you know, fashion companies were like incinerating products. But I think it's going to take, you know, actions from consumers, actions from government, and then ultimately actions from companies. But I don't know. I just don't trust the companies to do it all on their own. I think they're going to have to be held to account. And it's up to, you know, it's up to consumers to do it, and it's up to legislation to keep companies in line, because ultimately, you know, these are a lot of them are like publicly held companies, publicly traded companies, and, you know, they're incentivized to grow and make more money. So, Riz,
Yeah, I
I
think
didn't,
that's sorry, I think I
yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Kind of to see that, and that's the French government, is it? That's
yeah,
kind of passed that law.
yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because so much of our our fight for the environment, our fight for the planet, will boil down to the bravery of leaders in government, the bravery of leaders in industry. And yes, I do think that I'm a big believer in people power. I'm a big believer that we can kind of, as I said, you know, use our money to show what we care about and the way we want the world to progress. But we do also need that leadership. And that's why I think, you know, platforms like yours are so important as well, because I think, you know, what you've been shining a light on in the last, you know, for a very long time now, and what you managed to do with your kind of voices platform as well, is bring together leadership in industry and in fashion across the world. So I do think it's somewhere in that kind of sweet spot, sorry, of kind of visible leaders in government and industry taking a stand, and then also consumers going, hey, you know what? We're going to hack this for ourselves. We're going to find ways of accessing the coolest, you know, sustainable clothing. So I
yeah,
think it sits somewhere between those two to
yeah,
find a solution.
yeah. Um, I didn't want to have this conversation with you without talking about your latest big project, which um, you've been working on and you've been telling me about a little bit in the background. And you've been very, you know, using back to your word productivity, you've been very productive recently. Can you talk to us a little bit about, you know, the long goodbye and
Sure.
the work that you've been doing about the breakup with Britain and how that whole project came together?
Yeah. Well, so I've just released this album. It's called The Long Goodbye. And it's interesting. I usually release music, for those that don't know, under the name Riz MC for the last 15 years now. And it's always just been a passion of mine. It's been a space for me to kind of express my unfiltered voice. It's the time where I get to write the lines that I'm saying. I'm the director, I'm the composer. You know, I get to just kind of put it all out there and speak from the heart. But this time I haven't released it under the name Riz MC. I've released it under the name Riz Ahmed. And that's because I feel that it's a time for unmasking. It's a time for kind of being your full unapologetic self. And it's an album that comes from a really, really personal place. Um, it's a concept album. And the album is a story of, it's a breakup album, really. You know, it's an album about being dumped by the country that you call home. And so it kind of charts a story of me being dumped by Britannia, aka Britney. And it's interesting, as I've been kind of, you know, promoting the album and putting it out there on social media, people from the Philippines to Russia to Hungary to India to America have all similarly kind of felt this. I felt kind of a little bit unwanted in a country that they call home, in a home that they built. And I almost feel like it's the other global pandemic that we're facing right now is rising intolerance, rising hate, you
Yeah.
know, distrust of outsiders, nativism, xenophobia. And so, yeah, it's a concept album that kind of talks about this feeling that I started having post-Brexit of feeling a little bit unwanted in my own country. And it talks about this issue from a very emotional, personal place of this breakup with Brittany or Britannia. And there's, I just actually dropped a new music video for it last night on
I saw
Instagram.
it. Yeah.
And there's also a short film that goes with it, directed by Anil Karia, which
That
kind of
film was just, yeah, it was devastating for me. Like I felt that, I've talked to a few Muslims living in the West, and everyone had kind of the same reaction, which is like it spoke to me so deeply on a level that I hadn't really considered before. Because I think, a lot of people don't understand what it's like to have, and we both have the same last name actually. So like every time you or I have to cross international borders, or we have to kind of, be who we are in the worlds in which we occupy, there's, that comes with certain challenges, and we're privileged, and you and I are like seriously privileged individuals. And so these situations that, it captured in that film, which started with such a lighthearted, happy, familial vibe, and then turned into this dystopic fear that I think maybe is so deep-seated in a lot of us. It really spoke to me.
Well,
thank you so much for doing that.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, it's interesting, like you make things from the heart, you're not sure what reaction they'll get, but it's been crazy to see the response. As you said, for, Muslims in India and Britain and America, but also people from just all different communities kind of saying, this is where we're headed. I won't ruin the film by talking about what happens in it, but if you are interested, check out The Long Goodbye. It was kind of bizarrely, it was mentioned in British Parliament actually.
I
the
saw
day
that
after it came out, which is crazy.
Saw that.
So I'm glad it's starting conversations, and I hope people will check it out and make their own mind up about what the film's saying. But the reason I made this film and the reason I made this album is because I would find myself in rooms full of quite successful people of all different backgrounds, Jewish, Black, Muslim, East Asian, and they would say things, whether in Europe or in the UK or in America, and they would say, I'm not sure whether it will be safe for my kids to live in this country. I'm not sure whether by the time it gets to my grandchildren's generation, will they be cursing me for having stayed when I had the chance to get out?
Yeah.
And that's something I'd never really heard before growing up. And I thought that my role as an artist is to kind of just name this feeling and explore this feeling from an emotional point of view, not get into a, intellectual debate about multiculturalism and immigration, but just say, you know what this feels like? It feels like a heartbreak. A lot of people feel heartbroken right now. And that's really what the album's about. So yeah, it's called A Long Goodbye. And if people are interested, I hope they'll check it out.
They should definitely check it out. Riz, how much of the film was, triggered by Brexit? Like how much of it do you think that brought it to the surface?
I think that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
I think that crystallized a lot of hidden prejudices, in our society in the way that Trump's election did in America. But actually the album takes quite a long view. It actually starts off with a music video that I dropped last night. This is the first track on the album. It kind of starts off with the moment where the very first moment that we met, me and Brittany, or me and Britannia, back in the 1700s in India, when we were just kind of seeing each other. There was no commitment. And then she moved in without asking me, and she started like using all my stuff. And so it kind of takes this kind of holistic view. And I do think that right now is a moment of reflection for all of us to stop and have a look at our governments, look at our societies and say, we need to redefine this relationship.
Yeah.
We need to call out the elements of this relationship that are toxic. We need to call out the fact that maybe immigrants are villainized, but they've contributed so much to these societies. We need to call out the fact that universal healthcare isn't available in these societies. This is a moment right now, I think, of reckoning and renegotiating what we expect from our social contract, with other people in society and with our governments. So, yeah, as I say, I kind of feel like there's something quite timely about the album, even in these current circumstances.
I mean, you were supposed to go on tour, right, to kind of promote the album. So this situation kind of like, it got in the way of your productivity. And how are you kind of pivoting your strategy for promoting the album and what you do around it in this current situation?
we're all having to reimagine our roles, right? And I
Yeah.
think right now a lot of artists are wondering what their role is. Um, I was about to go on tour in the US and America. I was putting together a really special live show with Manchester International Festival and Brooklyn Academy of Music, a concert that's also kind of tells the story of the breakup. And I'm really sad people who are going to come and see there, you know, it was all sold out. I won't be able to see them right now, but hopefully we'll be back later. But what I've decided to pivot to is to go from the long goodbye tour to the long lockdown festival. And so while we're all in lockdown, I'm actually doing events. We did a group live screening of Four Lions with the other actors on Monday. And tomorrow I'm going to be in conversation with Hassan Minaj and Gaz Khan. And we're going to be having a
On
conversation about
Instagram?
on Facebook Live or Instagram Live. I'm not sure. I'm going to
Okay.
announce it tomorrow.
Okay.
And so I'm just finding ways of staying connected, staying creative, keeping the conversation going. And yeah, hopefully people will tune in for that.
Well, I'm going to tune in. That's awesome. I didn't know you were doing that. Thanks for taking time to chat, Riz. It's, you know,
Thank you so much, brother. And thank you for, continuing to bring us all together and allowing us to reflect.
yeah, no, it's my pleasure. And I always enjoy our chats. They always leave me with food for thought. So I'm going to think some more about the things you said. Thanks to everyone who joined us. And I know a lot of you had questions. I'm sorry, 30 minutes went by really fast, but this is part of a series of events that the Business of Fashion has been hosting every single weekday. As you're all locked down all over the world, as we all face this unprecedented situation, it's a time for us to stay connected to each other. And so thank you, Riz, and thanks to all of you for joining. And stay tuned for more BOF Live events every single day.
Much
Take
love,
care, Riz.
guys. Take
Okay,
care. See
bye.
ya.